Hello, BookTube. Hello, friends. Welcome to Lizzie Faye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth. And today is Friday, July the 2nd. And even though it's Friday, I think instead of a Friday Reads video today, I want to go ahead and share with you my June wrap-up. I already did kind of a mid-month wrap-up somewhere around the 20th after the Golden Girls readathon was over and the category romance readathon was done. And I had already accomplished all of my prompt goals for the Pastoral June readathon, and so you've already seen the majority of what I read for the month of June, but I did go ahead in the last 10 days and finish up a few things that I had started and listen to a few more audiobooks for a total of 25 books for the month of June. And miraculously, 8 of them were print books. Really, 7 of them could count as books. One of them was just a little short story that amounted to just a few pages. But anyway, 8 titles that I read with my eyes, and then 17 audiobooks. So of the total 25, 5 of them were mysteries, 4 of them were Christian fiction. A couple of the Christian fiction were romances, but I'm counting the Christian fiction separate, and then 5 romances that were not Christian fiction. And then 2 books that in some circles might be considered Christian fiction. You might even find them on the shelves with Christian fiction, but after reading them, I don't consider them they're not what I consider Christian fiction, and I'll talk about those in a little while. But they were fun books, just not, I don't think they really fit the definition, at least what I think of as Christian fiction. I read 2 middle grade books, and then the little short story I read is a YA book, so the total middle grade / YA titles were 3, and then 6 books that I would consider historical fiction. Now, one of those had a futuristic element, but the majority of the book was historical, and you've already heard me talk about it, so I'm going to put that under the historical fiction umbrella, and that totals 25 books. So a lot of these I talked about already in my readathon wrap-up, so I don't need to go into great detail, and some of them I am going to be talking about in future videos. So let's just show them to you quickly, and we'll go from there. So the 5 mysteries. The very first book of the month I read or listened to was Crocodile on the Sandbank by Elizabeth Peters. This is a series that I want to read because our local mystery book club at the library is reading a book farther down in the series. And I think now if I read or listen to 3 of these a month, I will be able to read all of them by the time we get to the one we're reading in November, I think. So it's like number 14 or something. And I did suggest, now that I've read this first one, when we had our last mystery book club meeting, I suggested to the rest of them that they try to at least read that first one, just to get a baseline of the feel for the series before jumping into book 14. Because what we did with this series, this was our read for June, Wildfire by Anne Cleeves, and this is book 8 and the final book in the Shetland series. And I went ahead and jumped in headfirst into this one without having read any of the other the other books in the series. It was fine. I understood what was going on, but, now that I've read this one, it sort of diminishes my desire to go back and start at the beginning, because I feel like all the personal relationships and the recurring character storylines are all wrapped up now, and I already know what happens. So, that's kind of the danger of jumping in at the end of a series, but it can stand alone as a mystery story without having read the earlier books. So then I read 3 cozy mysteries. 2 of them I already talked about. These were for the Golden Girls readathon. Bedeviled Eggs by Laura Childs is book 3 in the Cackleberry Club mysteries. And then Framed in Lace is book 2 in the Needlecraft mystery series by Monica Ferris. And then during the last few days of the month, I did listen to The Cracked Spine by Paige Shelton. My sister sent me this book in a bunch of books that she picked up for me for $0.25 a piece at Gardner's Bookstore, which is the largest used bookstore in Oklahoma. And she was was there one day and she said, oh, they have all these cozy mysteries that are quarter a piece. And she sent me photographs and asked me to pick out some that I wanted. So this was an author I recognized, even though I had not read any books from this series. But thankfully, it was book one. It's the Scottish Bookshop Mystery Series. I really enjoyed the narrator on this. I listened to this on Hoopla on audio, and I thought it was great. I'm definitely interested in reading or listening to more from this series. This is the only physical book I have of the series, but it was as Nicole and her friends said when they did their live show discussion of this video or of this book, it was a good solid start to a series, and I thought the narrator did a fantastic job. I don't know if they speak normally, if their native tongue is a Scottish accent, or if that was just good training, but it sounded very authentic to me, and I enjoyed the audiobook. All right, then for Christian fiction, I read 4. Right now, one of them I read with my eyes, and the other 3 I listened to on audio. The one I read with my eyes was for my Get Serious About Series challenge, book 2 in the Haven Maker series, called Being Known by Robin Jones Gunn. So far, there's only 2 in this series. I hope there's going to be more. This is just a really good series about a friend group. It is also a spin-off series of the Christy Miller series, which is a YA series that Robin Jones Gunn wrote several years ago. I have not read any of those, but Christy is all grown up and married now in this book, in this series, and we get to meet her and all of her friends, and it's just a very good series. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I want to thank the publisher for sending me this book. The publisher is Waterbrook Multnomah, and they sent me also the first book in the series, which is called Becoming Us, and I thoroughly enjoyed it as well. Then the other book that I read, this Christian fiction that is on my Get Serious About Series challenge, is book 4 in the Dearest, Dorothy, or Welcome to Partonville series by Charlene and Baumbich. This is a series about an older woman. She's in her 70s, maybe even 80s, and her name is Dorothy, and she's just a dear. She really is a Dearest Dorothy. And the series is so sweet and so wonderful. They're, it's not without conflict. There are some conflict, but they're very clean and sweet and comfort reads, and just very, very enjoyable. Not quite as funny as like Miss Julia, but still a very enjoyable book to read with an underlying faith theme. And then the other 2 books were supposed to be part of my author binge project for the month of June. I had said this was going to be my month of Lori's. I had 3 authors with the first name of Lori, Lori, and I had planned to read at least 3 books by each of those 3 authors named Lori. 2 of them are Christian authors, and instead of an author binge, it was more of an author sampling. Although I had read both of these authors before and really enjoy their work. So it was fine, but I just didn't meet my goals for what I had hoped to read for the month of June. I read a standalone by Lori Copeland called Now and Always. This was very, very good. It is about a woman who rescues some horses. She owns a women's shelter. She runs a women's shelter for battered women, and then she takes in some horses at the beginning of the book that were in a car accident. They had been destined for the slaughterhouse, and she rescued them, and so she's just one of those people who just all around wants to do good, but yet she's not the best business manager, and financially she's about to go under, and she has taken on all of these different responsibilities. There is a bit of a twist in this. There's a bit of a romance and a bit of a twist, and I just thought it was fantastic. I almost wish it was a series. It was so good. And then the other book is the beginning of a trilogy. I've had this on my shelf for so long. This was very good. I didn't even realize this is a historical Christian romance. This is Moonlight on the Millpond by Lori Wick. It's book 1 in the Tucker Mills trilogy. It's set in the 1800s in Boston. I don't know the exact year. It probably tells in here, but I don't remember. 1838. It does say in here. Yay. So, very good. Very enjoyable, but I felt like what resolution there was at the end wasn't enough. Now, I know it's the beginning of a trilogy, but I don't know. I would have liked to have seen a little more resolution in this book itself. because now you feel like you definitely have to go on and read to get the full story, which is fine. But I just wanted to see a little bit more before this book wrapped up, and what was wrapped up felt like it was all of a sudden at the end, kind of. But then there was another resolution that I felt was resolved too early and then stretched out too long. Does that make any sense? Overall, it was an enjoyable read. I didn't hate it. There was just some things about it that I was like, wait a minute, what? So I am looking forward to the rest of the series. They're just beautiful. Look at that. I love the titles and the covers and everything. And I think I will go ahead and listen to the rest of those, the other two in that series, in July. In fact, I plan to, because I've already checked them out on Hoopla. So you'll be hearing more about that trilogy as we go. The other Lori is a romance author. So let me go on into my romances, of which I read 4, right? Yeah, 5. 5 romance books that are not part of my Christian fiction selections. I read books 2 and 3 in the Twilight Texas series by Lori Wick. So this is my third Lori. These were good. There were some steamy scenes in, I don't think they were till right near the end. And so that was kind of good. I was able to get through each of the books without, being bombarded with, too much over the top steaminess, until right at the end. And really, I forget now which one it was. One of them would have been totally fine, but when she got to the sex scenes, I felt like the terminology she used just really cheapened it. When it wouldn't have been over the top, except I didn't like the wording that she used. I think it was her effort to try to be sexy, but it just, I don't know. It was kind of a turnoff. So anyway, the stories in these have both been very good. I've enjoyed the stories, just not a fan of the sex scenes. And thankfully, I think in both of these, there was maybe just one sex scene in each book. So so that was fine. I mean, not fine, but I can handle it. I guess is what I'm trying to say. This one had no sex scenes, which was great. This is just a sweet romance, and it is one I read for the Golden Girls Readathon. Love's 9 Lives by Cara Coulter and Cassidy Caron, and this was just really adorable. And this one, what sex scenes it did have took place within a marriage, so I can get behind that. I don't have a problem with that. This is Virgin on Her Wedding Night by Lynne Graham, and I read this for the Golden Girls Readathon. And I feel like I had one more. Oh, yeah, this one. This is book 2 in the Bella Vista Chronicles by Susan Wiggs. And it's called The Beekeeper's Ball. Now, I had read The Apple Orchard a few years ago. I remember listening to it on audio when Emily was in the hospital back in probably 2018. And I remember Chloe read it about the same time. I don't think did we do a read along? I think Sarah and I were trying to do a buddy read, and a few people joined in. And gosh, that's been so long back now. But I remember none of us really loved that book. And then I didn't even realize that there was a book 2. And then a couple years ago, or like maybe last year, when the Lost and Found bookshop came out, I listened to that, and Sarah and Chloe also read that for their Book Sisters book club. I think that was maybe the first book they read for that, and I was listening to it, and then as I'm going along, I'm recognizing a few of the character names. And I was like, wait a minute, is this connected to the Apple Orchard? And sure enough, it was. Not even realizing that there was a book 2 in between. So I put this on my Get Serious About Series challenge because I wanted to go ahead and just catch up, be up to speed on the series. And I liked this one better than the Apple Orchard. Maybe not quite as much as Lost and Found Bookshop. And I do like that Susan Wiggs doesn't get too graphic with her sex scenes. There is some steamy scenes, sort of, but they're not overly graphic. So that's good. She's more about the story, and I think in all of these books there was a historical element. I enjoyed the historical element in Lost and Found Bookshop a lot more than I did in this one. The historical element in this book was set in World War II, which may have been the case with the other two, but the story just didn't reach out and grab me, and not as much as the story, the contemporary story. I was more interested in the contemporary story. But then, interestingly enough, at the very beginning, the male lead was just awful. And so he gave me a bad first impression, and to the point where I was just listening to it and thinking, oh, please don't let this guy be the love interest. He's terrible. He did improve some and he had some character growth, but it's hard to erase that bad first impression. And I just thought, what would she see in him? And then it's kind of funny how in a book like this, if that had been real life, and even he got off to a bad first impression with her as well, but then how can she in the same thought be admiring how good looking he is? It just doesn't make sense to me, because if somebody made me that angry and did what he did in the beginning, I would just be so mad. I wouldn't even care if he was good looking or not. And then he had kind of a medical emergency, and I feel like she was just kind of like standing there, and I was like, well, do something. So the beginning of this book just didn't get off to a good start. It did get better as it went along, and it was interesting, but I don't know. Like I said, not as good as Apple Orchard, maybe, no, better than Apple Orchard, maybe not as good as Lost and Found Bookshop. I think I rated all of them 3 stars, so, it's a fine line. And then the next group of books, let me rearrange here so that I don't have them all go tumbling. Let me do the other 2 fiction books. I mentioned that I read a couple of books that in some circles would be counted as Christian fiction, and I think the authors are probably Christian. They're, in one case, the theology definitely differs from mine, and I'm not saying that that's why I'm making a mess of this. Let's just get started. Okay, so this is the last book in the Harmony series by Philip Gulley. Philip Gulley is a Quaker minister. So I've been a member of a Southern Baptist church my whole life, and you can understand that the theology that I've been taught and believe is going to be different than theology from a Quaker minister. So we don't need to argue about that. There are some characters in this book who are trying really hard to do the Christian thing, but they go about it in entirely the wrong way. And then there are people in this book who are just, I don't even want to say it. I don't even know how to say it. Okay, there's some people who go way off the deep end, and there's some people who don't even get in the water, I guess I should say. And real true Christianity falls somewhere in the middle. So I think this book is frustrating a little bit for an evangelical Christian to read, because I don't even know how to say it. I do want to probably do a whole review of this series now that I'm done with it. And I'm not trying to tell you not to read it if you are a Christian and you like to read Christian books. Just know that we need to be able to laugh at ourselves. There's no disputing that. But it goes off the deep end in one sense, and then it goes off the other deep end, and there's no in between in this book. And that's all I guess that I could say about it without spoiling it or without getting too controversial. I did enjoy it, but this is probably my least favorite of this series. For the most part, it's just a funny series. You can laugh it off, and I've enjoyed most of the series. And so this one is called Almost Friends. It's by Philip Gulley, and there is a spinoff series that is called the Hope series. I have all of those on my shelf. They're here somewhere. Right here. I've got a couple of them here. And I have the rest of this series. And I'm going to keep them. I may even reread them at some point. But they're just a lot of fun. But not what I would consider a Christian book in the sense... Well, you get the Christian message in this book, but then someone turns around and disputes it, I guess is a good way to say it. And it's not done in such a way that... that the message that the person is trying to share gets across in any sort of effective way. That's all I can say. Okay, this book I think is written by a Christian author and is intended to be a Christian book, but it really doesn't go much farther than the main characters going to church, and they do talk about praying, but I can't call this a clean book because there are mentions of sex outside of marriage. There is a teenage pregnancy. There's a lot of swearing, and most of those things are on the part of the teenager, but it's still there. So I couldn't recommend this as a clean book, like for a teenage girl to read. Although a teenage girl might read this and then realize the mistakes that this one teenage girl made in this book, and it might help dissuade you from not going in that direction. But it's meant to be lighthearted and humorous, but I think it missed the mark on that. And the thing that bothered me the most about it, by the way, did I tell you what it's called? You can see. True Love and Homegrown Tomatoes by Julie L. Cannon. It's the first in a trilogy. I am going to read the other two. But the thing that bothered me the most about this book is that we start out the story with our main character and her husband. They have been married for, I think, 48 years. And he dies right in the beginning of the book. And so she's widowed. She is raising two girls. She's raising her niece and an adopted daughter. And her friends, church friends, start trying to encourage her to get out and date. And I think she's only been widowed maybe like 3 months, which I think is ridiculous. What kind of friend tries to get you to date when you've been married to someone for 48 years and they want you to stop grieving after 3 months and get out and date? And then the crazy thing is that she does it. And she goes out with a couple of different men, eventually gets engaged, and I won't go any more detail from there, but I was just like, what? No. I mean, give it at least a year. I think it says in here that she is 50, she's a 56, which is my age, or a little older. I think she's 56 or 66. I don't remember now, but still, I was just like, what in the world? So, anyway, that was the problem I had with this. It's meant to be lighthearted. Again, I'm not going to try to tell you not to read it. Just know that it's not squeaky clean, not without controversy, and you might find it a little distasteful, but overall, I think it's meant to be lighthearted and fun. It just missed the mark a little bit, and I was a little bit disappointed with it. And this was a book I started back in January. I was enjoying it, but still, those problems have started to crop up. And then it just didn't fit with any of the readathons for February and March and April, and I just couldn't seem to get back to it. Finally, I flew through the end of it, the second half. I read it. It was not hard to read, and I'm so glad that I got it done because I'm really curious to go on and read the other two books. In fact, I've got them right here. Let me show you, just if you're curious. I got that book and this one from, no, this one, the second one, from Book Outlet, although I don't think they have any more copies. This was several years ago. But this is what really drew me to it. Mater Biscuit. The woman is really good at growing tomatoes, and so hence the name, Mater Biscuit, and I just love that. I love that title. And then book 3, I eventually found somewhere, Those Pearly Gates. This is on Hoopla on audio, so I'll be able to listen to this one on audio. This one I'll need to read in print. But I'm looking forward to it. I hope that books 2 and 3 are better than book 1. And that may have been her debut novel, maybe? I'm not sure. She has some other books. I haven't heard super high reviews on a couple of the others, at least one of the others that I'm thinking of now. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Okay, 2 books that are middle grade that are Newbery winners. Yay, I finished the last 2 books that I needed to read that are Newbery winners of the 1960s. So I'm not going to go into detail about these right now. I will plan to do my video pretty soon. I'll probably need to check out from the library the others that I don't own. But I read Onion John by Joseph Crumgold, and I read The High King by Lloyd Alexander. This is book 5 in the Chronicles of Prydain. So I had to read the other 4 books, and I'm so glad I did. This was a fantastic series. Just a wonderful friend group, and I just grew to love these characters, and I just can't say enough good things about this Chronicles of Prydain series. I really, really enjoyed it. And then the other book that was in this middle grade / YA category, it was book 3.5 in the Maze Runner series. And if you saw my video about books that coworkers recommended that I have read over the last several years, Maze Runner is one of those books. And so when I was researching that video and refreshing myself on some of those books, I noticed that there were some bonus stories and novellas from the Maze Runner that I had not read. I've read the 5 books from the series, but I hadn't read any of the shorter bonus stories. So the one I did read, it was called something like Thomas's First Memory of the Flare, and there's a link to it in the description on Goodreads. It sends you to the author's website where you can read the book, if you can call it a book. I want to say it was like 3 pages. So we'll call it a story, a very short story, but it is on my Goodreads. It counts for my total, and there is another one that is a little bit longer, and I think I'm going to need to pick it up on my Kindle. And the last category of books I need to tell you about are the historical fiction books that I read. And my apologies if there was a abrupt cutoff into this segment. Sorry about that. But anyway, I read 6 books. One was Greenwood by Michael Christie. I buddy read this with Summer from Cozy Reading with Quaker Cats. We both loved it. And I still plan to do a video dedicated to that book. It was just really, really good. And I read another Civil War book on the heels of finishing Sunflower Sisters in May. Now I have read The Book of Lost Friends by Lisa Wingate. Both this one and Sunflower Sisters were so good. And I keep mentioning Sunflower Sisters because that's another video I need to do. I want to do. And I've still got the book laying here even. So this was so compelling, so wonderful. This actually had 2 historical timelines. One set in the 1980s and one set post Civil War in the Reconstruction era. And both storylines I thought were very compelling and very good. And then 4 books by Flora Thompson that had to do with the Lark Rise to Candleford trilogy. I read this bind-up of all 3 books that is abridged. And then on audio, I listened to all 3 books in their entirety. The first book is Lark Rise. The second book is Over to Candleford. And the third book is Candleford Green. There is a TV series called Lark Rise to Candleford, and we watched the first 3 episodes as a watch-along with Angie from Literary Labors, who was one of the hosts of the Pastoral June Readathon, along with Summer from Cozy Reading with Quaker Cats. And then my husband and I went ahead and watched the rest of the first season because those DVDs were due back at the library, and we just thoroughly enjoyed the whole first season. We will definitely watch the rest, as many as we can get our hands on. I think it's on Hulu, but right now we're in between Hulu. We had it, and we are transferring our membership to like a package deal with something else. So we had to cancel what we have, and then we'll be picking it back up again. And so anyway, we just went ahead and watched our DVDs, thoroughly enjoyed it. And my husband has not read any of the books, and I want to encourage him to read the books. I would equate it to sort of like what Little House on the Prairie is to America and Anne of Green Gables is to Canada. This is to England, maybe. I don't know if that's a good analogy, but the stories were set in a small hamlet and then a larger market town, both still very small villages, and they are semi-autobiographical by Flora Thompson. So I would encourage you to, excuse me, to read the books, watch the show, all of the above. I thought they were all wonderful and thoroughly enjoyed them. So that is about it for my June wrap-up. It has gotten very dark and rainy. It is pouring down rain outside right now. And so if you noticed a difference in the lighting or anything, that is why. So that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a great day. Read a good book, and God bless you.